Thank you for coming out. I appreciate it.
So I guess a good place to start would be, how did you first discover the history of the Angola prison?
Being a blues and roots musician, I was doing some research, basically as I say in the film, and I came across Louisiana State Penitentiary, Angola, and the rich musical history. I had no idea of that, all of that, 10 years ago. And so I was planning this trip down Highway 61 and came across this research. And as I was going down Highway 61, I saw the sign that said Angola, turn right. And literally took the turn and stopped at a convenience store and asked for a phone book. Got the number. Actually, the gal there knew the number off by heart. Her boyfriend was incarcerated there, so. And the rest is history, you know. I just slowly developed a relationship with the warden, especially Warden Kathy Fontenot, and slowly, and also the inmates. You know, that took a little bit of time.
How easy was it getting the prison to be interested in the documentary taking place, and how embracive were they of the project?
Well, you know, because I started 10 years ago, it was a little easier. I don't think you could get in as easy as all that today, you know. They've had a lot of projects since then. You know, Dead Man Walking. I mean, tons of films have been made using that facility, you know, because it's an amazing property. You know, it's 18,000 acres. I know the fellow in the beginning says 5. It's actually 18,000 acres. It's the size of Manhattan. It's bordered on 3 sides by the Mississippi River, and it's quite an amazing piece of property. And so it took many years, and at first I thought I would do a concert, you know, down there, and then, you know, I mean, everybody has done a concert for these inmates. It's amazing. They actually turn really famous people down, which will go unnamed, but you wouldn't believe the people they turned down. And so, you know, the idea to do a concert, once I heard the musical inmates, you know, it was a moment. It was like, no, I should do a concert with them instead of for them.
Actually, on that particular note, I mean, how easy? What was the initial reaction from the inmates when you tried to get them involved? I mean, were they a bit hesitant, or?
Well, it was kind of surprising because I thought they'd be jumping up and down. I did. It's naive and you know, I thought they'd be really excited. But you know, there is footage, my own footage that I took, you know, in developing this whole thing, where I'm standing and they're standing around me and they've got their arms crossed, and one guy yells out, "Well, where's my $1 million?" and all of this stuff. You know, they're kind of hip to being exploited, and so they weren't as receptive as I thought they would be right off the bat, until I talked to them for a while, spoke with them, and you know, gave them a little bit of my history. You know, the importance of music in my life and the difference that it made for me, and once they trusted me, that I was just going to tell their truth. You know, I'm not, you know, I'm just going to tell, you know, I'm just going to show what's happening. They opened up.
Actually, was it a decision taken at the beginning of the project to not mention what the inmates were doing time for until the end of the film, so that you could develop a relationship with the characters, or
yeah.
with them as characters, I guess?
Yeah, that was. We decided that early on, because if you knew what they were in for, you know, your judgment would be tainted already, right? Because it's natural. That's how we are. I mean, we're all a little bit like that. So we wanted you to get to know them. I mean, I would hear sort of hints of what Ray was in for, or, you know, until he out and out said it, you know.
So you didn't actually know yourself until.
Yeah, you know, there was sort of like, kind of, we'd go back to the hotel and stuff like that, or, you know, we know it's something pretty serious. Although, you know, I met a young man. He came up to me at that concert footage there. There's a young man that comes up to me, and he's, I would say he was about 18, And he had a note that he wanted me to hand one of the wardens, you know. And he said, "Oh, Miss Rita, will you hand this, give this note to the warden?" I said, "What is it?" And he says, "It's just about my case, you know, if they'll look at it." And I said, "Well, what are you in for?" And he said, "Drugs." You know, and I said, "Well, how much time did they give you?" And he said, "Life." So he's going to be in there a long time, you know, because he's going to be in there a long time, you know. So yeah.
Does anyone have any questions? Nobody? Yes. Oh.
Were there any times during the making of the film that you felt depressed or despairing being in that environment, or did you find it made you hopeful? And how did you carry on through whatever ups and downs you went to finish making the film?
Through the making of it, I think that the overall feeling was one of hope. I think that when they finally, when the inmates finally agreed to perform and agreed to talk to us and tell us their story, I think that at that point, it was a high point for them, and it was a moment where they could tell what had happened, that somebody's listening, you know. And so the mood was basically, or mainly, I would say, hopeful throughout the making of it. Yeah.
You said that it took 10 years to get the project together.
Yeah.
Why did it take so long, and how much of that was spent on building sort of the narrative and idea, and how much on the logistics?
I say 10 years because the first time I went down and sort of the wheels started turning was 10 years ago. Actual, like, really hard work down to it, you know, contacting directors and producers, and, you know, getting the okay from the inmates, going back down, getting the okay from the wardens, and then, you know, now I wanted to do a concert. First it was a concert for the inmates, okay, that's one thing. Then there was a concert with the inmates, and then they said, you know, this has never been done before, the warden said. So then I thought, well, geez, we should, you know, this needs to be taped then, right? So now it was going to be taped, you know, so it just kept growing, you know, bigger and bigger. And so I would say that the real heavy stuff took about 5 years.
And actually, with regards to the production side of stuff, how involved were you in the production? Did you essentially just get a team of filmmakers on board to document it, or were you in the process from?
I tried to be in the process as much as possible. You know, there's definite disagreements, you know, with the producers. You know, I mean, there was one heavy disagreement, but whatever. You know, when I got Bruce McDonald on board, and Bruce McDonald's had a film here at Raindance called Hardcore Local. He's quite a famous Canadian director. Kind of guy. Anyway, and he had put one of my tunes in his earlier films, and so that when I got the okay from the prison and the inmates and everybody was in, I contacted Bruce, and he loved the idea, so he was in. So now I had a well-known director, right? So that was key because I could use his name. And I'll tell you a little bit of I think it's kind of an interesting story. So we have this meeting. Bruce is really interested. He says, I'm in. And I said, will you give me a letter of intent? And he said, I will. So now, like I say, I have Bruce McDonald's name. And he says, but, you know, you're going to have to find producers. You're going to have to find people with money, you know. And I had never done this before. And a friend of mine had a business card of this producer, Erin Faith Young. And it was an old business card, and it had her home number on it, which is very hard to get these days, right? But this was before, because she's also been nominated for an Academy Award and an Emmy, and in the meantime. But so I had this old card that this friend gave me with her home number. So I called her up and at home, and I thought that she, you know, my name would sound somewhat familiar, you know. And I called her up and said, you know, I left a message. This is Rita Shirelli. I'm calling for Erin Faith Young. Will you please call me back? She called me back, and early on, almost immediately I realized she didn't have a clue who I was. And I said, "You don't know who I am, do you?" And she said, "No, I don't." So I threw in Bruce McDonald, that I had this idea. Bruce was in, and she said, "Okay, let's have a meeting. We'll talk about it." She said, "By the way, how did you get my home number?" And I said, "Well, I got this friend had an old card." She said, "I thought you were the tax lady." So that's how I got her to call me back right away. So it worked. It worked for me that she didn't know who I was. But anyway, getting back to your original question, I tried to work. Certainly voiced my opinion. This was a project. These people trusted me. You see, they trusted me. So anything that strayed at all from my promise to them. And the trust that I had built with the wardens and the inmates, I was very nervous about anything that went astray from that. So there were a couple of decisions, that it worried me, because of that. I was more attached to it than anyone, because I had worked on it the longest. So that was a little bit hard sometimes.
So have the prisoners seen the final cut, and also have you been back to see it?
I literally yesterday, and answered her today, got an email from Warden Kathy Fontenot that she will talk to Warden Burl Kane, that we will screen after the New Orleans Film Festival at the end of October, that they will allow me to go in and screen it for the inmates. So I'm very excited about that. That'll be the first time they see it, and that'll be at the end of October. They have no idea, I haven't written a whole lot. I have written a little bit. I haven't heard back. It's a difficult situation. I don't know if letters are intercepted. I'm sure they are. Things are, so this is really big. I'm really excited about that fact.
Just one quick comment and a couple quick questions. You brought it up at the beginning about putting the reasons why they were in prison at the end.
Yes.
Which I found absolutely satisfactory, because there's a voyeuristic aspect to me watching the films, knowing that we've all seen prison things, and the bold curiosity to say, why are they in there? And
Yeah.
the fact that you let us know at the end was, to me, just filled the need that I felt as a film viewer. Quick question: if you were inspired or thought about the whole Johnny Cash at Folsom Prison at all? And the second is, are you performing anywhere in London while you're here?
Unfortunately, I'm not performing in London, and I really need to perform in London, so we're going to have to work on that a little harder. It's not been easy. But hopefully with the film doing some of the rounds, it'll make me coming to London. I tour Europe a lot. Austria, Germany, Switzerland, Italy. For some reason, it's been very difficult. I had an opportunity to, there was, and now I forget the name of the festival, forgive me, but it was a pretty big festival. This was a few years ago, and I was booked for this festival. And the Mad Cow thing happened, and the festival got canceled, and it was my only opportunity that I've had so far, but I'll give it I'm going to have to give it a harder try. As far as the Johnny Cash thing, I saw it again recently, and at the time it was quite, it was something that this guy, going into the prisons and all of this. But as I said before, it really has been done a lot, what that was my original idea, but from what they tell me, performing with the inmates has not been done before. This is sort of a first. No one has put on a concert, with actual maximum security inmates. So I'm pretty proud of that fact, Maybe people will start doing that now, I don't know.
Is it something that you would do again?
I'm sorry, I
Is it
didn't.
something that you would do again, irrespective of the film? Would you like to go and do similar projects?
since the making of this film, and when I've done, we've done a lot of Q&As and actually performed after the film and stuff like that. So we've had a fair amount of exposure. I find that people want me to go to prison a lot. People would like to have me go and speak and perform in prisons. It's something I never thought of before. This is, it's just things just sort of unfolded the way they did, and I never went down with, the first time I stepped foot in there, I never thought that it would turn into a movie. I never thought that it would turn into all of this, So there are people that are reaching out that are saying, please, come and show the movie. Please come and talk to. We're going through something right now in Canada where our Prime Minister, wants to. He thinks the solution is, building bigger prisons, and it's a really big issue right now in Canada with Harper, and people are reaching out saying, you got to talk to this guy and stuff like that. So. I don't know if that answers your question. I'm not sure, I'm really grateful that I was able to get this one made, though. I'll tell you that much for sure.
Where did the musical instruments, it looked like good equipment they were using,
Yeah.
where did it come from, and is it still there for them to use?
This is their equipment. We purchased a few $1,000s worth of equipment for them as a gift. The soundtrack, the purchase of the soundtrack, part of that money will go back to enhancing the equipment. And yes, that's theirs. There's not enough of it to go around. Some of it is pretty good, but we purchased a fair amount of it. Yeah.
And on the subject of the soundtrack, do you want to?
I think your mic's off.
Yeah, I think it. Right. On the. Hello? Yeah. On the subject of the soundtrack, do you want to say anything?
I do have the soundtrack available for purchase if anybody is interested. The soundtrack really kicks butt. I produced it myself, and I guarantee that. And like I say, part of the money goes back to the penitentiary. It doesn't go back to the inmates themselves, of course, but just sort of to enhance their musical stuff down there, the musical program.
Just on the same note, is that something that you had to negotiate before you started the project, in terms of if there was to be a soundtrack, or did that develop?
Like giving back something to them, you mean? It came down to when the producers were negotiating, because it costs the penitentiary money to, they had to have guards follow us around. It's a complicated thing. You can't just say, hey, let's get all these guys, and it's a big deal. It doesn't look like it, but in that there were over 800 people in that. It's a really big place, and there's 5,000 inmates though. But these are the ones that were allowed to come or wanted to. In the negotiations, the producers came across somehow that, if you gave a donation, made everybody's life a little better, and rightfully so. Like I say, it costs them a lot of money to have us there, with, all the guards have to follow you around, and it's, who's going here, who's going there, and everything like that, so, and, yeah, so it helped.
Any more questions?
Quick question, if you could disclose what your final budget was when you finished wrapping.
For the final budget was in the vicinity of about $300,000.
I think I have time for 2 more questions. If anyone has.
Yeah, was it always a choice to film in black and white? I mean, it works really well. It looks great. Just wondering if that was.
We thought that the black and white. I really think it's beautifully photographed, if that's the right word. The cinematography is Steve Cousins is the cinematographer, and that was an early on decision. He started with just photographs around and immediately started showing us the photographs in black and white. In other words, he shoots with color film, but takes the color out so that there's that depth and richness to the black and white. And as soon as we saw the images in black and white, we all agreed that that's the way it should look, all of us, Bruce McDonald, myself, and the producers.
And one last question.
What's happening to the film now and in the future in terms of distribution, and where will it be seen?
It's, you know, it's doing the rounds of festivals. You know, it has played in New York and LA. It's played in Santa Rosa just last week. It's going down to New Orleans. It's going to play in a few different places in New Orleans, as far as here as well. And we're going to try to start a little bit of a tour with promoting the film and performance at the same time. We're looking for distribution. We don't have distribution. We've been basically, the producers and I have been basically just working it ourselves. And, you know, doing screenings, of course, across Canada. And the soundtrack has just been released in the States. And interest has been building as well, just through the soundtrack, people listening to the soundtrack. So we hope to get more dates through that.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming, and Rita Shirelli, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank everyone, all the organizers here at Raindance. Thank you. Thank you, Elliot. Thank you, Chris.
And do buy a soundtrack.